Wyckoff, the Dean of the College of Public Health at East Tennessee State University. And I'm pleased to provide an update on a presentation that I made a couple of weeks ago on whether we are seeing a resurgence of COVID-19 in the United States. A few weeks ago, there were a lot of headlines around a second wave or a resurgence. Some of them went away, but now they've come back, particularly focused on the question of whether we're seeing a resurgence in four southern states: Arizona, Texas, Florida, and South Carolina. And these are reportedly seeing a significant increase in the number of cases. Now, as we said before, an increase in cases depends on what the definition is. A true case is somebody with symptoms and a confirmed test. In many cases, the media uses the term cases to mean a positive test. And a positive test can come from a number of factors. It can be due to an increased number of people who are infected, which is what most people intend it to mean. It could be due to an increase in the number of people who are tested. You test more people, you find more positives. Or it could be due to more accurately targeting people. You test people who are more likely to be infected, or some combination of the above. So what we've been doing is not looking at cases per se, but deaths and deaths per million. And as I've shown you before, after initially growing very quickly, the number of deaths per million in the US was slowing down and has been slowing down consistently. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not seeing an increase in cases, especially in certain areas, because you could have an overall slowdown in the deaths nationally. If there, obviously, first of all, because there's a significant lag time between an infection and a death, but also you could have cases and deaths slowing in one part of the country and increasing in another, or cases could be occurring in populations with low death rate, like young people, before affecting those at higher death rates. But most people are suggesting that we're seeing a slowing in most of the northern states, especially New York, New Jersey, those who were significantly impacted early, and increases in these southern states. Now, I want to show some data that I find a little bit confusing. So this is the same chart I showed you before, where I showed you the bars over time. And basically what we see is back in April, the US was seeing a very, very rapid growth rate, almost doubling in a week, down to the 3.9% that we saw last week. The reason I want to show you this is also what we're seeing in Europe. If you look at the four most seriously impacted countries in Europe, the ones with the highest deaths per million, there's Belgium with a number that's basically approaching zero. They're seeing no week-to-week growth rate. There's the United Kingdom, also quite low. There's Spain, also approaching zero, and Italy also approaching zero. So this seems to be the natural history of what happens with this pandemic. At least it has in Europe and the United States overall. But if we look at these four southern states, we see something quite different. Now, when you look at Arizona, initially it looks like Europe, except for something notable, and that is that it's leveling out at a 10 to 15% a week growth rate. That's pretty significant, because remember, 1 week if you have 100 and you have a 10% growth rate, the next week you get 10 more, so you have 110, then you get 11 more, and so on and so forth. So a persistent growth rate is actually quite worrisome, and that's what we're seeing in Arizona. It's what we're seeing in Florida at almost 10%. It's what we're seeing in South Carolina at almost 10%. And it's what we're seeing in Texas as well. So we're not seeing the explosive numbers that we saw initially, but we are seeing this steady, persistent pattern. And I think probably what happened in the United States and what's happening in some of these states is initially it explodes in your large metropolitan areas, and then it slowly starts to ebb into other areas as well. So are we seeing a resurgence in these four states? Well, we can't say for sure without more systematic testing. But it is certainly worrisome that deaths from the pandemic are continuing to show a consistent week-to-week growth rate and are not waning, as we saw in Europe or to date in the rest of the United States. And if there is or has been a significant increase in infections and cases, then we would expect to see the number of deaths increasing in a few weeks. So right now, it looks worrisome. It certainly looks like we're seeing a continued slow burn, if you will, not the explosive fire that we saw in the beginning, but it certainly isn't going away as we would have expected based on the pattern in Europe and in the United States overall. So something to keep our eye on. I'm sorry I don't have more definitive information. There's plenty of other COVID-19 mini videos at our website. And if you have any particular questions, please feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to try to answer them. Thank you very much.